I won $33 million, Amina whispered, but the words stayed trapped in her mind, a secret too dangerous to voice. Her breath caught, picturing Eleanor's syrupy smile, her mother-in-law who wielded kindness like a blade, and David, her husband, whose charm masked control. They'd used her, her bank job, her compliance, treating her as a convenient trophy, a black woman to parade as proof of their progressive family. Her fingers clenched, the lottery ticket burning in her purse. She thought of Maya, her long-lost sister, the only blood who might understand, and Robert, David's father, whose greed lurked behind his polished facade. No one could know. Not yet. Drop a 1 if you're hooked, or comment what time it is where you're reading from. Amina's fork trembled against the porcelain plate, the faint clink swallowed by the hum of polite laughter. Eleanor's voice, syrupy and sharp, cut through. That dress, Amina, it's darling. Did you find it at one of those quaint little boutiques downtown? Her smile was a blade, her eyes flicking to the scuffed heels Amina hadn't replaced in years. Amina's lips curved, a practiced reflex. Yes, Eleanor, a lucky find. Her throat tightened, the air in the dining room heavy with the scent of roasted lamb and unspoken judgment. She sat straighter, her spine a silent rebellion against the weight of their gazes. Eleanor's, Robert's, David's. The chandelier above glittered, casting fractured light across the mahogany table, but it couldn't mask the chill in her bones. Robert leaned forward, his cufflinks glinting. Amina, you're still at that bank, yes? I've been meaning to ask. There's this investment opportunity, a property in the Hamptons. You handle numbers all day. What's your take? His tone was casual, but his eyes were vulture-sharp, circling. She swallowed, her pulse a dull thud in her ears. I'd need more details, Robert. Real estate can be tricky. Her voice was steady, but inside a familiar ache bloomed. He wasn't asking for her expertise. He was fishing for free advice, another way to use her. David's hand brushed hers under the table, a gesture that should have been warm but felt like a leash. Dad's just looking out for us, babe, he said, his smile all teeth. He knows you're the smart one. The words were honey, but they stung. She saw it in the way his eyes darted to his mother for approval, the way he never met hers for long. Amina's chest constricted, a memory clawing free. The cold dorm room at the orphanage, her small hands clutching a tattered book. Dreaming of a family that would see her, truly see her. Not this. A trophy wife, a black woman polished to fit their narrative of progress. She was their proof of virtue, nothing more. Excuse me, she murmured, pushing back her chair. The scrape against the hardwood was louder than intended, a small defiance. I need some air. David's brow furrowed, but he didn't stop her. Don't be long, babe. Mom's got that creme brulee you love. Eleanor's laugh tinkled. Oh, let her breathe, David. She works so hard. The words dripped with condescension, and Amina's nails dug into her palms as she walked out. The night air hit her like a slap, sharp and clean outside the suffocating opulence of the mansion. She stood on the stone steps, her breath fogging in the cool evening. Her fingers brushed the cheap fabric of her purse, the one she hadn't replaced because every penny went to bills, to keeping up with David's world, a world that never felt like hers. She walked to her beat-up sedan, parked out of sight behind Robert's gleaming Mercedes. The corner store was a 5-minute drive, a ritual she clung to. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed, and the clerk barely glanced up as she grabbed a lottery ticket. Same as always? He asked, his voice flat. Yeah, she said, sliding a crumpled 10 across the counter. Her fingers lingered on the ticket, its glossy surface a fleeting spark of hope. A foolish hope, she knew, but it was hers. Back home, the apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that pressed against her skin. David was still at his parents', probably sipping cognac and laughing at Robert's stories. She sank onto the couch, the springs creaking under her weight. Her phone buzzed, a text from David. You okay? Mom's worried. She didn't reply. The lottery ticket sat on the coffee table, its numbers staring up at her. 3, 12, 19, 27, 34, 41. She'd chosen them years ago, a random whim, but they felt like a prayer now. She opened her laptop, the screen's glow harsh against the dim room. The lottery website loaded slowly, her heart a steady drum as the numbers appeared. Her breath caught, a sharp gasp that burned her throat. She checked again, her fingers shaking on the mouse. The numbers didn't change. $33 million. Her vision blurred, not with tears but with something fiercer. Fear, exhilaration, dread. Her hands gripped the edge of the couch, the fabric rough under her palms. What now? The question clawed at her, raw and relentless. She saw Eleanor's smirk, Robert's calculating eyes, and David's empty promises. If they knew, they'd swarm her, their hands outstretched, their smiles sharper than ever. She'd seen it before, small loans she'd given David for his business ideas, never repaid. The time she covered Robert's car repair, only to see him buy a new watch the next week. Her heart raced, a wild thing trapped in her chest. She stood pacing the small living room, her shadow flickering against the peeling wallpaper. The ticket felt radioactive in her hand, a secret too heavy to hold. She slipped it into the zippered pocket of her purse, her fingers lingering on the clasp as if it could lock away the truth. No one can know. The thought was a lifeline, anchoring her against the chaos in her mind. She imagined David's voice, smooth and coaxing. "We're a team, babe. Let me handle it." She imagined Eleanor's faux concern, Robert's sudden interest in her well-being. They'd strip her bare, not of money, but of herself. She sat again, her breath uneven. The apartment felt smaller now, the walls closing in. She thought of the orphanage, the endless nights of wondering who she belonged to. She'd built a life from nothing, clawing her way to a bank job, to this marriage, to this fragile sense of belonging. And now this money, this impossible, dangerous money, could unravel it all. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from David. "Coming home soon? Love you." She stared at the words, her stomach twisting. Love. The word felt like a lie, one she'd believed too long. She leaned back, her head against the couch, the tickets weighed a phantom in her purse. She didn't know what came next, but one thing was certain. She wouldn't let them take this from her. Not David, not his parents, not the world that had always seen her as less. This was her chance, her secret, her power, and she'd guard it with everything she had. Amina's fingers hovered over the laptop keys, the screen's glow a harsh beacon in her darkened apartment. Her pulse thrummed, a relentless beat as she scrolled through horror stories of lottery winners. Lives gutted by greed, families torn apart, strangers clawing at newfound wealth. Her breath hitched, the air tasting of dust and fear. $33 million. The number burned in her mind, a promise and a threat. She snapped the laptop shut, her hands trembling, and shoved the lottery ticket deeper into her purse's zippered pocket, as if hiding it could silence the chaos in her chest. Her phone pinged, a sharp intrusion, an email, subject line, "Family Reunion Inquiry." Her heart stumbled. The message was from a nonprofit tracing lost relatives, claiming a woman named Maya, 26, believed Amina was her sister. Amina's throat tightened, memories of the orphanage flooding back, cold nights, whispered prayers for a family she'd never known. She typed a reply, her fingers stiff, agreeing to meet at a cafe downtown. Her eyes stung, not with tears but with something rawer, a hunger she'd buried long ago. The next morning, Amina sat in the cafe, her coffee untouched, its steam curling like a ghost. Her leg jittered under the table, her nails digging into her palms. What if it's a mistake? She scanned the crowd, her gaze snagging on a young woman with tight curls and wary eyes. Maya. The resemblance was a punch. Same high cheekbones, same guarded tilt of the mouth. Amina stood, her knees unsteady, and their eyes locked. "You're Amina?" Maya's voice was soft, hesitant, her fingers twisting the strap of a worn backpack. Amina nodded, her throat too tight for words. They sat, silence stretching taut between them. Maya broke it first. "I grew up in foster homes, rough ones. Found out about you last year, through records. Our mom, she died when I was 2. Her voice cracked, and Amina's chest ached, a wound reopening. I didn't know, Amina whispered, her hands clenching her coffee mug, its heat searing her skin. I was 4 when they took me to the orphanage. I thought I was alone. Maya's eyes softened, but her shoulders stayed rigid. I've been tending her grave. Just a stone, some daisies. It's all I could afford. She laughed, a brittle sound. Sounds pathetic, right? No, Amina said fiercely, her voice catching. It's not. She wanted to reach across the table, to bridge the years stolen from them, but her hands stayed frozen, trapped by fear of breaking this fragile connection. They drove to the cemetery, a quiet plot on the city's edge. The grave was small, the daisies wilted but carefully arranged. Amina knelt, her fingers brushing the stone, her breath shuddering. Maya stood beside her, silent, her presence a tether to something Amina had lost hope of finding. Family. The word felt real for the first time. Not a fantasy, but a heartbeat. Back in her apartment that night, Amina's mind churned. The lottery ticket burned in her purse, a secret too heavy to share, even with Maya. She saw David's face, his easy charm masking control, his parents' smiles hiding their disdain. If they knew about the money, they'd tighten their grip, turn her into their ATM. She paced, her bare feet cold against the linoleum, her reflection in the window a stranger's. Wide-eyed, defiant. She called Patricia, a lawyer recommended by a bank colleague. Her voice was low, urgent. I need to claim something, anonymously. Can you help? Patricia's calm professionalism steadied her. They met the next day in a sleek office, where Patricia outlined the process. A trust, Sunrise Trust, to shield Amina's identity. You'll get about $20 million after taxes, Patricia said, her pen tapping the desk. But you need a plan. People get reckless. Amina nodded, her stomach twisting. She hired Michael, a financial advisor Patricia vouched for, who mapped out a strategy. Half in safe investments, bonds, index funds, 10% for personal use, the rest for a future charity. Amina threw herself into learning, devouring finance books, her highlighter streaking pages of The Intelligent Investor. But doubt gnawed at her. Could she trust Michael? Patricia? She insisted on non-disclosure agreements, her signature shaky but resolute. A week later, a call from an unknown number sent her heart racing. This about the lottery winner in your area? A man's voice asked, oily and probing. Amina hung up, her breath ragged, and checked every lock in her apartment. She switched to a burner phone for Patricia and Michael, her paranoia a living thing. No one can know. Not David, not his parents, not even Maya. Not yet. She saw David that evening, his tie loosened, his smile too bright. You've been quiet, babe, he said, pouring wine. Everything okay? His hand grazed her shoulder, but it felt like a claim, not comfort. She thought of Maya's daisies, of the grave she'd tended alone, and her resolve hardened. I'm fine, she lied, her voice steady but her pulse a traitor. She saw the truth now. David wasn't her family. He was a chain, one she'd forged in her desperation to belong. The money wasn't just freedom. It was a mirror, reflecting who he really was, and who she could become. I'm meeting a friend tomorrow, she said, testing him. Someone from my past. David's brow arched, his fingers tightening on his glass. Who's that? Just someone, she said, her smile a shield. You don't know her. His eyes narrowed, but he let it drop. Turning back to his phone, Amina watched him, her heart a quiet storm. Maya was her blood, her chance at something real. And the money? It was her weapon, her escape. She wouldn't let David or anyone take it from her. Not now, not ever. Amina's fingers tightened around the chipped mug, the coffee's bitterness mirroring the knot in her chest. Maya sat across from her in the cramped apartment, her eyes darting to the floor, her hands twisting the frayed hem of her jacket. I hate asking, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper, but I'm short $5,000 for tuition. Last semester. If I don't pay by next week, they'll kick me out. Her shoulders hunched as if braced for rejection, her gaze flickering with shame. Amina's heart clenched, a sharp pang of recognition. She'd worn that same look years ago, begging for scraps of kindness in the orphanage. You're not losing school, she said, her voice firm. But inside, a plan sparked. $20 million sat in her hidden accounts, a fortune guarded by trust and secrecy. Yet she saw an opportunity, not just to help Maya, but to test the man she'd called husband. She leaned forward, her elbows pressing into the wobbly kitchen table. "I'll talk to David," she said, watching Maya's eyes widen with hope and fear. "We'll figure it out." The lie tasted sour, but it was necessary. She needed to see David's true colors, to know if the man who swore to love her would stand by her blood. That evening, David sprawled on the couch, his phone casting a blue glow on his face. Amina stood in the doorway, her pulse a steady drum. "Maya needs help," she said, keeping her tone soft, almost pleading. "5,000 for tuition. It's her last semester. I want to cover it." David's head snapped up, his brows knitting together. 5,000? His laugh was sharp, slicing through the air. "You're kidding, right? That girl shows up out of nowhere, and now she's got her hand out? She's playing you, Amina." His eyes narrowed, glinting with something colder than doubt. "We're not a charity." Her nails bit into her palms, the pain grounding her. "She's my sister," she said, her voice low but steady. "Family helps family." He stood, looming over her, his cologne sharp and cloying. "Family? You've known her for, what, 2 weeks? I'm your family, Amina. And I say no. We can't afford to throw money at every sob story." His hand gestured to the room, the peeling paint, the second-hand furniture, as if her life was a debt he'd paid. She swallowed the fire in her throat, nodding slowly. "Okay, I'll think about it." But her mind was already elsewhere, plotting. She saw it clearly now. David's love was conditional, a transaction. The money in her trust, her secret, felt heavier, a shield she'd wield alone. Sunday dinner at Eleanor and Robert's was a theater of polished lies. The dining room gleamed, silverware clinking like a chorus of false promises. Amina sat rigid, her fork hovering over the glazed carrots. David, emboldened by wine, leaned toward his mother. "Amina's got this new friend," he said, his tone mocking. "Some girl claiming to be her sister, asking for 5 grand. Can you believe it?" Eleanor's lips pursed, her pearl earrings catching the chandelier's light. "Oh, Amina, darling," she said, her voice dripping with pity. "You're so kind-hearted. But people like that, they'll bleed you dry. You need someone to manage these things." She glanced at David, her smile a silent command. "David should handle the finances from now on. Women can be too soft, you know." Robert nodded, his jowls quivering. "Exactly. I knew a guy once. Lost everything to a cousin with a sad story. You've got to be practical, Amina." His eyes flicked to her, hungry for control, and she realized he wasn't just talking about Maya. He'd been bleeding money on a bad deal. She'd heard the whispers at the bank. They saw her as a resource, not a person. Her chest tightened, a familiar ache of being unseen. "I understand," she said, her voice a perfect mask of compliance. "I'll be more careful." But her blood simmered, her mind racing. They thought her weak, pliable. They were wrong. The next morning, Amina met Maya at a park, the air sharp with autumn's bite. She pressed an envelope into Maya's hands, the $5,000 drawn from a hidden account. "Untraceable." "Don't tell anyone," she said, her eyes scanning the empty benches, paranoia a constant shadow. "Not even David. Just finished school." Maya's eyes brimmed, her fingers clutching the envelope like a lifeline. "I don't know how to thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I swear I'll pay you back." Amina shook her head, her throat tight. "You don't owe me anything." She wanted to say more, to tell Maya about the millions, about the cage she was trapped in, but the words wouldn't come. Not yet. As Maya hugged her, Amina felt the warmth of her sister's arms, a fleeting anchor against the storm inside. She thought of David's sneer, Eleanor's condescension, and Robert's greed. They'd failed her test, their loyalty as thin as the veneer on their dining table. But Maya was different. She was blood, yes, but more than that, she was real. Back home, Amina sat alone, the apartment's silence pressing against her. Her burner phone buzzed. Patricia, confirming the trust was secure, the money safe. She exhaled, her breath uneven. The secret was a weight, but it was also power. She saw David's face in her mind, his easy charm unraveling into control, his love a lie she'd believed too long. She stood, her shadow sharp against the wall. The money wasn't just freedom, it was a weapon, one she'd wield carefully. She thought of Maya's daisies, fragile but defiant, and her resolve hardened. She'd protect her sister, protect herself. And when the time came, she'd show them all what she was capable of. Amina's vision blurred, the bank's fluorescent lights swimming as she hefted a box of files down the stairwell. Her head spun, a sudden lurch of dizziness, and her foot caught the edge of a step. The world tilted. The box crashed, papers scattering like startled birds, and her body followed, slamming against the concrete stairs. Pain seared her temple, warm blood trickling down her cheek. Her arm throbbed, twisted at an unnatural angle. Voices echoed, colleagues shouting, footsteps pounding, but darkness swallowed her whole. She woke to the sterile beep of machines, the air thick with antiseptic. Her head pounded, each pulse a hammer against her skull. Her left arm was heavy, wrapped in a sling. She blinked, the hospital room coming into focus. White walls, a flickering TV, and Maya slumped in a chair beside her, her curls spilling over her face as she slept. Amina's chest tightened, a raw ache blooming at the sight of her sister's hand resting near hers, fingers curled as if reaching out. A doctor entered, his voice low. "You're lucky, Ms. Johnson. You lost a lot of blood, but we got a donor just in time. Your sister, she insisted on giving." He nodded toward Maya, who stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Amina!" Maya's voice cracked, thick with exhaustion. She sat up, her hands trembling as she reached for Amina's. "You scared the hell out of me." Her eyes were red, her jaw tight, but a small smile broke through, fragile and fierce. "You gave blood?" Amina's voice was hoarse, her throat raw. She tried to sit up, pain shooting through her arm, grounding her. Maya nodded, her fingers tightening around Amina's. "They said you needed it fast. I didn't think, I couldn't lose you." Her voice broke, and she looked away, her shoulders shaking. Amina's eyes stung, a heat she couldn't name rising in her chest. She saw the orphanage again, her small body curled on a cot, whispering for someone to come for her. No one ever did, but now Maya was here, her blood in Amina's veins, a bond deeper than promises. "Thank you," she whispered, the words too small for the weight they carried. The doctor cleared his throat. "We tried contacting your husband, Ms. Johnson. Couldn't reach him. Your sister was the only one who showed up." Amina's breath caught, a cold knife twisting in her gut. "David," she asked, though she already knew. "Left a voicemail," the doctor said, his tone neutral but his eyes soft with pity. "Said he was in a meeting, out of town. Something about a resort." The words landed like a slap. Amina's mind flashed to David's text from last night. "Love you, babe." She heard his voice now, filtered through the nurse's phone as she lay bleeding. "I'm in a meeting. Handle it." Her fingers clenched the hospital sheet, the fabric rough against her skin. She saw his smile, his charm, the way he dismissed Maya's plea for help. He hadn't just failed her. He'd abandoned her when she needed him most. Maya's hand squeezed hers, grounding her. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft but searching. Amina forced a nod, her lips tight. "Just tired." But inside a storm raged. She saw David's face, his easy lies, his parents' calculated kindness. They'd never seen her, not really. She was a tool, a trophy, a means to an end. But Maya had run to her, given her blood, her time, her heart. The doctor left, and Amina's gaze drifted to the ceiling, the tiles a blank canvas for her thoughts. She remembered the $5,000, the way David's sneer had cut deeper than she'd admitted. She remembered Eleanor's patronizing smile, Robert's greedy eyes, and she remembered the ticket, hidden in her purse, now locked in a hospital safe. $20 million, her secret, her power. It wasn't just money. It was a mirror reflecting who they really were. "I'm sorry I dragged you into this," Amina said, her voice barely audible. "You had to miss something important, didn't you?" Maya's laugh was brittle, her eyes glinting. A job interview. Big deal. You're more important. She leaned closer, her voice dropping. You're my sister, Amina. I don't care about the rest. Amina's throat burned, tears threatening to spill. She blinked them back, her jaw tight. Maya's words were a lifeline, pulling her from the wreckage of her marriage, her illusions. She thought of the orphanage, the years of longing for someone to choose her. Maya had chosen her, without hesitation, without conditions. I need to make a call, Amina said, her voice steadier now. She reached for the burner phone in her bag, her fingers brushing the hospital gown's rough fabric. Maya stepped out to give her privacy, and Amina dialed Patricia, her lawyer. I need you to start something, she said, her voice low, resolute. A divorce, and I need it airtight. Patricia's tone was calm, professional. I'll need details, Amina. Evidence, if you have it. I'll get it, Amina said, her eyes narrowing. She hung up and dialed another number, a private investigator recommended by a bank colleague. I need everything you can find on my husband. His trips, his spending, his meetings. Her voice was steel, but her hands shook, betraying the fury beneath. She leaned back, the pillow cold against her neck. The hospital room felt smaller, the walls pressing in, but her mind was clear, sharp as a blade. David had left her to bleed, but Maya had saved her. The truth was stark, undeniable. Her marriage was a lie, a gilded cage she'd mistaken for a home. But she wasn't trapped anymore. The money, the secret, the sister. She had everything she needed to break free. Her eyes drifted to the window, the city lights blurring in the distance. She thought of Maya's daisies, fragile but defiant, and felt a fire kindle in her chest. She'd been invisible too long. Now she'd make them see her, on her terms. Amina's fingers traced the edge of her hospital sling, the coarse fabric grounding her as David burst into the room, a bouquet of roses spilling from his arms. His eyes were wide, brimming with rehearsed remorse. Babe, I'm so sorry, he said, his voice thick, almost breaking. I was stuck at that damn resort. No signal, no way to get to you. I was losing my mind. He knelt beside her bed, his cologne sharp, overwhelming, his hand reaching for hers. Her skin crawled at his touch, but she kept her face soft, a mask honed by years of playing their game. It's okay, she murmured, her voice a fragile thread. Inside, her pulse roared, a storm of disgust and clarity. She saw his lie in the flicker of his eyes, the way they darted to the monitor as if checking his performance. No signal. She'd heard the nurse's call, his curt dismissal. Handle it. Her blood burned, but she held it in, a coiled spring waiting to snap. You don't know how scared I was, he continued, setting the roses on the bedside table, their petals too perfect, like his act. I got the first flight back. I'm here now, babe. I'll take care of you. His smile was all charm, but it didn't reach his eyes, and Amina saw the truth. He wasn't here for her. He was here for control. She nodded, her lips curving just enough to placate him. I know, she said, her voice a practiced calm. But her mind was elsewhere, replaying the doctor's words. Your sister was the only one who showed up. Maya's blood coursed through her veins now, a bond forged in sacrifice, while David had left her to bleed alone. Discharged the next day, Amina leaned on David's arm as they walked to the car, her steps deliberate, her weakness a performance. Back at their apartment, Eleanor and Robert descended like vultures cloaked in kindness. Eleanor bustled in with a steaming pot of ginseng soup, her voice syrupy. You need to rest, darling. Let us take care of you. She ladled the soup into a bowl, her pearls clinking, her eyes scanning Amina's face for cracks. Robert followed, arms laden with gift bags, vitamins, herbal teas, a silk robe. We're family, he said, his voice booming with false warmth. This accident, it's a wake-up call. We need to stick together. His hand patted her shoulder, heavy, possessive, and Amina's stomach twisted. She saw the desperation in his eyes, the rumor of his failing investments, a whisper she'd caught at the bank. They weren't here for her. They were here for what they thought she could give. Thank you, Amina said, her voice soft, her eyes downcast. But her fingers curled into fists beneath the blanket, nails biting her palms. She remembered David's sneer at Maya's plea, Eleanor's patronizing advice to let him manage her. They thought her broken, malleable. They were wrong. That night, alone in the bedroom, Amina checked her burner phone. An email from the private investigator waited, its subject line stark. Preliminary findings. Her breath caught as she opened it. Photos loaded slowly. David laughing with a blonde woman at a candlelit table, his hand on her wrist. Receipts for a diamond necklace. A five-star hotel suite. A medical record from David's last checkup, confirming his blood type. O positive, useless to her in the hospital. Her chest tightened, not with shock, but with a cold, clarifying rage. She'd suspected his betrayal, but seeing it laid bare was a blade, sharp and final. She stood, her reflection in the mirror, a stranger's, eyes hard, jaw set. She thought of Maya sleeping in a hospital chair, her blood saving Amina's life. She thought of David's absence, his lies, his family's greed. The $20 million in her trust felt like armor now, a secret they'd never touch. She texted Patricia. Add these to the divorce papers. Make it ironclad. Her fingers trembled, but her resolve was stone. David knocked, his voice muffled through the door. Babe, you need anything? Mom left more soup. His concern was a performance, and Amina's lips curled, a flicker of disdain. I'm fine, she called, her voice steady, a lie as polished as his. She heard his footsteps retreat, and she sank onto the bed, her sling heavy against her chest. The roses on the nightstand mocked her, their scent cloying. She remembered the orphanage, the nights she'd prayed for love, for family. She'd thought David was the answer, but he was a cage, gilded and cruel. Her phone buzzed again, a message from Maya. You feeling okay? Need me to come over? Amina's eyes stung, a heat rising she didn't fight. She typed back, I'm okay. Thanks for being there. The words felt inadequate, but they were true. Maya had chosen her, without hesitation, without strings. She stood again, her bare feet cold against the floor. The apartment was quiet, but her mind was loud, a symphony of anger and purpose. She saw Eleanor's smile, Robert's calculations, and David's betrayal. They thought they could control her, mold her into their vision of a dutiful wife. But she wasn't their puppet anymore. Her fingers brushed the purse where the lottery ticket once hid, now replaced by bank statements only she and Patricia knew. The money was her power, her escape. But it was Maya's sacrifice that gave her clarity. She wasn't just breaking free, she was rewriting her story. And when the time came, she'd make them face the truth, not with tears, but with a fire they couldn't extinguish. Amina's heels clicked against the marble floor of Eleanor's dining room, each step a deliberate strike. The chandelier above cast prisms of light, but the air was thick, heavy with the scent of rosemary and lies. Guests in tailored suits and glittering dresses sipped wine, their laughter a polished veneer over the tension coiling in Amina's chest. She sat at the table, her sling gone but her arm still aching, a reminder of the blood Maya gave, the blood David didn't. Her lips curved into a smile, practiced and sharp, as Eleanor raised her glass. To Amina's recovery, Eleanor said, her voice dripping with warmth, her pearls gleaming like armor. We're so grateful to have our family whole again. The guests clapped, their eyes sliding to Amina, curious, appraising. David's hand rested on hers, his touch a claim she no longer recognized. She felt his gaze heavy with expectation, and her pulse thrummed, a drumbeat of defiance. Robert stood, his jowls quivering with self-importance. This scare reminded us what matters, he said, his voice booming. Family protects family. That's why we've decided David will take over Amina's finances. She's been through enough. She needs someone to shield her from the vultures out there. His eyes locked on hers, a challenge masked as concern. The table murmured approval, glasses clinking. But Amina's fingers tightened around her napkin, the fabric twisting in her grip. David leaned closer, his breath warm against her ear. It's for the best, babe, he whispered, his smile ablaze. You don't need the stress. His confidence was a taunt, as if her accident had broken her, made her pliable. She saw the greed in his eyes, the same hunger she'd glimpsed in Robert's faltering investments. in Eleanor's desperate need for control. Her heart pounded, a wild thing caged too long. She stood, her chair scraping the floor, the sound cutting through the chatter. "Thank you, Eleanor, Robert," she said, her voice clear, steady, a blade of its own. "But I don't need protecting." The room stilled, forks pausing, eyes narrowing. David's smile faltered, his hand hovering as if to pull her back. She stepped to the head of the table, her fingers brushing the tablet in her purse. "You've all been so kind," she said, her tone laced with ice. "Especially David. He's been busy, haven't you?" She tapped the tablet, connecting it to the room's oversized screen. The guests leaned forward, their curiosity a palpable hum. David's jaw tightened, his eyes darting to his mother. The screen flickered to life. A photo. David laughing with a blonde woman, her hand on his arm, a candlelit table between them. Gasps rippled through the room. Another image. A receipt for a diamond necklace. Dated the day Amina lay bleeding. Then the final blow. 2 blood test results side by side. David's O positive, mocking her near death. "You couldn't save me," she said, her voice low, lethal. "But you didn't even try." David's face drained of color, his mouth opening, closing, a fish gasping for air. "Amina, this is... Babe, you're confused," he stammered, his hands raised as if to ward off the truth. The guests whispered, their eyes darting between them, the air electric with scandal. Eleanor stood, her glass clattering to the table. "Amina, this is outrageous." Her voice shook, her composure cracking. "You're embarrassing yourself. And us." Amina's smile was a razor. "Am I?" She slid a thick folder across the table, its weight thudding against the wood. "This is my divorce filing, David. With every receipt, every photo, every lie. I suggest we settle quietly. You wouldn't want this in court, would you? Not with your family's reputation." Her eyes flicked to Robert, whose face was ashen, his hands trembling. The room erupted, voices overlapping, shock, outrage, whispers of betrayal. A woman in a red dress clutched her pearls. A man coughed into his napkin. David lunged for the folder, but Amina stepped back, her stance unyielding. "Don't," she said, her voice a quiet storm. "You've done enough." Eleanor's eyes blazed, her lips a thin line. "You ungrateful girl," she hissed, stepping closer. "After everything we've done for you." "Done for me?" Amina's laugh was sharp, cutting. "You used me, my job, my time, my trust. But I'm done being your trophy." She turned to the guests, her voice steady, commanding. "Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed the show." She walked out, her heels echoing, the folder left like a grenade on the table. Outside, the night air hit her like a release, cool and sharp. Her chest heaved, her breath uneven, but her steps were sure. She felt the weight of their stares, their judgment falling away. The tablet in her purse was a weapon, the divorce papers her shield. She thought of Maya, her sister's hand in hers, her blood in her veins. Maya had been there, not David, not his parents. They'd failed her test, their loyalty as hollow as their promises. Her phone buzzed, Maya's name on the screen. "You okay? Want me to come over?" Amina's eyes stung, a heat she didn't fight. She typed back, "I'm good, just free." The word felt new, alive, a spark in her chest. She climbed into her car, the engine's rumble a quiet rebellion. The $20 million waited, her secret now her strength. She saw David's face, crumpled in defeat. Eleanor's twisted with rage. They'd thought her weak, a pawn in their game, but she'd rewritten the rules. The dinner was her reckoning, and she wasn't done yet. She'd build a life on her terms, with Maya by her side, and no one, not David, not his family, would take that from her again. Amina's heels clicked against the pavement, each step a pulse of liberation as she left Eleanor's mansion behind. Her breath was sharp, the night air cutting through the heat of her fury. The folder of evidence, photos, receipts, blood tests, lay abandoned on the dining table. A guillotine blade dropped on David's lies. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with the electric thrill of having spoken her truth. She slid into her car, the engine's hum a low growl, and drove into the city's neon blur, her heart pounding with a freedom she hadn't tasted before. Her phone buzzed, Maya's name lighting the screen. "Amina, what happened? You okay?" Her sister's voice was a tether, warm and urgent, pulling her back from the edge of chaos. "I'm done," Amina said, her voice steady, though her knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "I walked out. Divorce papers are on the table. They know everything." Her words felt like a vow, each syllable a brick in the wall she was building around herself. Maya's breath caught. "You're... wow. You sure you're okay?" "I can be there in 20. "No," Amina said, softer now, a smile flickering. "I'm good. Really. I just need... time." She hung up, her chest tight with gratitude. Maya's voice was a reminder of what family could be. Not blood alone, but choice, sacrifice, presence. By morning, the fallout began. Patricia, her lawyer, called, her tone crisp. David's attorney reached out. They're not fighting the divorce. They want it quiet. Too much at stake for their precious reputation. Amina's lips curled, a bitter satisfaction blooming. She'd known they'd fold. Their empire of appearances couldn't withstand the truth. "They don't get a cent," Amina said, her voice steel. "Make sure of it." "Already done," Patricia replied. "The trust protects your assets. They have no claim." Amina exhaled, the weight of $20 million a silent armor. She'd been careful, her secret locked tight, and now it was her shield. She met Maya at a diner, the smell of grease and coffee grounding her. Maya slid into the booth, her eyes searching Amina's face. "You look... different," she said, her voice cautious but warm. "Like you're not carrying the world anymore." Amina's fingers traced the rim of her mug, the ceramic warm against her skin. "I'm not," she said, meeting Maya's gaze. "I told them about David's affair, his lies. I showed everyone. And I walked away." Her voice trembled, not with doubt, but with the raw edge of victory. Maya's eyes widened, a grin breaking through. "You're a badass." She reached across the table, squeezing Amina's hand. "I'm proud of you." Amina's throat burned, the heat of tears she wouldn't shed. She squeezed back, feeling Maya's pulse, a rhythm that matched her own. "You saved me," she said, her voice low. "In that hospital. You were there. They weren't." The words were a confession, a debt she could never repay. Maya's smile faltered, her eyes glistening. "You're my sister. I'd do it again." The news of Amina's lottery win broke the next day, a controlled leak through Patricia's PR firm. The headlines were a wildfire. "Orphan turned millionaire. Banker's secret fortune." Amina's stomach churned as she scrolled through them, her face splashed across tabloid sites, her past in the orphanage dissected like a specimen. But she'd planned for this. The trust kept her anonymous enough, and the narrative shifted to her charity work, a story she'd shaped to drown out the gossip. David called, his voice a mix of panic and fury. "Amina, you can't do this. You owe me, us, something. After everything." His desperation was a blade, but it no longer cut. "You left me to die," she said, her voice cold, final. "You get nothing." She hung up, her hands steady now, the phone a weight she could bear. Eleanor's letter arrived the next day, a perfumed plea scrawled in elegant cursive. "We misunderstood each other, darling. Let's start fresh." Amina's laugh was sharp, tearing the paper in half. She saw through the words. Eleanor's desperation for a piece of the fortune, her fear of losing face. Robert's business was crumbling, clients pulling out as whispers of scandal spread. Their empire, built on lies and appearances, was fracturing, and Amina felt no pity. She met with Michael, her financial advisor, in a sleek downtown office. "The charity's set," he said, sliding papers across the desk. $5 million for the children left behind. It'll fund scholarships, health care for orphans. You're doing good, Amina." His smile was genuine, but Amina's eyes narrowed, still wary of trust. She'd learned too much about betrayal. She said, signing the documents, her pen steady. She thought of Maya's tuition, paid in secret, in the apartment she'd buy her sister. The money wasn't just power, it was purpose, a way to give what she'd never had. Back at her apartment, Amina stood by the window, the city's pulse thrumming below. Her arm ached, a faint reminder of the accident, but her heart was lighter, unburdened. She saw David's face crumpled in defeat, Eleanor's letter in pieces, Robert's empire teetering. They'd thought her weak, a pawn to manipulate, but she'd toppled their game. Her phone buzzed. Maya again. Dinner tonight? My treat. Amina smiled, her chest warm. She typed back, "You're on." She thought of the daisies on their mother's grave, Maya's hand in hers, the blood they shared. The money had shown her who they were, but Maya had shown her who she could be. She wasn't alone anymore, and that was worth more than millions. Amina's bare feet sank into the cool grass, the ocean's salt-tinged breeze brushing her skin. Her new home, a modest cottage perched on a cliff, hummed with quiet life, waves crashing below, roses climbing the trellis. She knelt in the garden, her hands buried in soil, the earth's pulse steadying her own. The $20 million had bought this haven, but it was the labor of her hands, the dirt under her nails, that made it hers. She clipped a rose, its thorns pricking her thumb, a sharp reminder she was no longer tethered to anyone's expectations. Inside, her laptop glowed, client emails piling up. She'd traded the bank's fluorescent grind for online consulting, her expertise now her own to wield. The quack from For the Children Left Behind, 5 million strong, funded scholarships and clinics for orphans, a legacy born from her own lonely years. She'd given Maya a small apartment near campus, tuition paid, a gift wrapped in silence. Her sister's gratitude, raw and unspoken, was a warmth Amina carried in her chest. But freedom wasn't flawless. Her phone buzzed, a news alert. Millionaire orphan faces scrutiny. The leak about her lottery win, traced to a loose-lipped bank colleague, had sparked a media frenzy. Tabloids dissected her past, their headlines barbed, from rags to riches, but at what cost? A reporter's call, oily and persistent, had wormed into her voicemail. "Amina, tell us about the girl who beat the odds." Her jaw clenched, the invasion of violation she hadn't anticipated. She felt exposed, her orphanage years twisted into a spectacle. She stood, brushing dirt from her hands, and called Patricia. "I want control of this," she said, her voice sharp. "No more vultures." Patricia arranged a press conference, a single appearance to shift the narrative. Amina faced the cameras, her chin high, her voice steady. "I'm not here for your headlines," she said, eyes piercing the crowd. "I'm here for kids like I was, left behind but not forgotten. My charity's my story now." The reporters scribbled, their flashes blinding, but she felt the weight lift, her truth reclaiming the spotlight. Another buzz, Eleanor's letter, forwarded by Patricia. "My dearest Amina, we misjudged you. Can we meet, mend what's broken?" The words dripped with false contrition, a ploy for her fortune. Amina's laugh was a shard of glass. She typed a reply, her fingers steady. "There's nothing to mend. We're done." David's text followed, a pathetic jab. "You can't cut me out completely. I'll sue." Her lips curled, disdain a cold fire. She forwarded it to Patricia, who sent a cease and desist letter, the threat of exposing David's affair a silent hammer. Amina donated another $1 million to her charity, anonymous, a defiant act of control. "They think I'm weak," she told Maya over coffee, her voice low, fierce. "But this money, it's mine to use, not theirs to take." The nights were harder. Alone in her cottage, the ocean's roar a constant companion. Amina felt the ache of solitude. She'd sit in her garden, the stars sharp above, and wonder if freedom meant loneliness. Maya was thriving, her design portfolio blooming, but she had her own life now. Classes, friends, a new boyfriend. Amina's heart twisted, a quiet fear she'd traded one cage for another, this one of her own making. She joined a local volunteer group, helping kids through her charity's programs. At a book drive, she met Clara, a retired teacher with silver hair and a laugh like sunlight. They bonded over dog-eared novels, Clara's stories of teaching in underfunded schools echoing Amina's own past. "You're not alone unless you choose to be," Clara said one evening, passing her a cup of chamomile tea. Amina's throat tightened, the words a mirror to her fears. She started meeting Clara weekly, Their talks a bridge across the quiet. Maya's call came one evening, her voice bright. Dinner at your place? I'm bringing someone. Amina smiled, her chest warm, and set the table in the garden, fairy lights twinkling against the dusk. Maya arrived with her boyfriend, Jamal, his shy grin disarming. They sat under the stars, plates piled with grilled fish and mango salsa, laughter spilling like wine. Maya's hand found Amina's, squeezing tight. This is home, she said, her eyes shining. You made it. Amina looked out at the ocean, its waves a restless hymn. She thought of the orphanage, the cold nights of longing, of David's betrayal, Eleanor's lies, Robert's greed. They'd seen her as a pawn, a trophy, but she'd rewritten their story. The money had been her weapon, but Maya's love, her blood, her presence had been her salvation. She leaned back, the rose's thorn prick a faint ache in her thumb. Home isn't where there's no pain, she said, her voice soft, steady. It's where you can face it and still smile. Maya nodded, her smile a mirror, and Jamal raised his glass, a quiet toast. Amina breathed in the salt air, her heart full. She'd found her family, not in the blood she was born to, but in the sister who chose her, in the life she'd carved from the ashes of betrayal. Amina stood in her garden, the ocean's whisper a quiet hymn. The roses, once thorny, bloomed fiercely under her care, mirroring her own rebirth. The $20 million had been her sword, cutting through David's lies and Eleanor's gilded cage. But it was Maya's blood, her unwavering presence, that anchored her. From the orphanage's shadows to this sunlit haven, Amina had forged a home, not of wealth but of choice. As stars pierced the night, she smiled, her heart steady. Freedom wasn't the absence of pain, but the courage to face it, and she was finally, gloriously free.